When was the last time that you tried or began something new? Hi, my name's Amy Stone. I'm the creator and the host behind The Art of Imperfect Adulting. The thing that I'm working on is a new show, a media product. But I think that the ideas that I'm talking about apply to starting pretty much any new project. That can be a hobby, it can be a health kick, it can be a new diet, it could be a new relationship, a new job. The reason I think this relates to the show is that the stories on the show are stories of people making choices, making changes in their life, decisions, and how they impact the future path. William Wordsworth said, to begin, begin. William Wordsworth was an English poet. He was born way back in 1770. He's known for kicking off the Romantic movement. If anybody's curious, you can wiki him. I also think that while I agree with this, it's not always all that helpful. In fact, if I'm in the wrong mood, sometimes it's an idea like that, like to begin, just start, can feel like criticism or a challenge or just not very good. And so, what I actually want to offer instead is the idea of releasing or letting it go of the idea that you already are supposed to know how to do something really well in order to be able to start. Don't get me wrong. It's just my opinion that in a lot of situations, you actually need to try something in order to get any evidence of whether or not it's going to work or not. For most of us, in order to get the proof or the evidence that we so deeply, deeply crave to have the confidence to move forward, we actually need to try it a little bit. You might be wondering how relevant or valid a quote from an old English poet who died more than 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, more than 200 years. How many years is it between 2025 and 1770? Somebody else do the math. Okay, that's super valid. But to bring it more modern to something you might have already heard of, back in 1988, I looked it up. Google thinks that really is the date. A really well known sports apparel company who named themselves after a Greek goddess launched a marketing slogan that you're probably much more familiar with. It's heavily trademarked, just do it. Marketing excellence aside, I do think those two phrases have similar messaging. Let me know if you agree or not. Maybe you think you want to run a marathon. That's something I've done. It's one of those epic adult things to see if you can do. When you have the idea, you might be really, really sure that you're going to love it. And maybe you will. You might be like me and find out you're a person who loves running. But most people hate running. Most people hate it. You have to try it before you know. Experts and advisors often present the idea that you should validate an idea before you try it. I think that can be good advice, but I actually think it can also be bad advice. It can be true and false at the same time. And that might sound like I'm playing both sides of the coin, but what I mean is that when I look for information or evidence or proof that something's going to do what I want it to do, I often find it. But if I look for some information or ideas or proof that something's not going to work, I also often find that as well. In order to find out whether or not something's going to work for me or whether or not it's something I want to do or it's worth the investment and time, I think that a lot of times I have to try it a little bit. For this show, for the Art of Imperfect Adulting, I had an idea. It was just a concept. And I had a lot of conversations with people before I started because I agree with the advice that to try and validate it is a good idea. To be honest, a lot of those people have told me they're not sure this is such a good idea. And in fact, the first like 20 or maybe 30 conversations, I was doing such a bad job of explaining the concept that those conversations were rough. And I'm really thankful, you guys, for those people who had those conversations with me. During those conversations, there were many, many people who were bold enough to just say, we don't think this is a good idea. We think you should do this instead. I actually decided that I was going to go forward and try this because I really, really like the idea and we're going to see if it's going to work. One more thing before I move off of this point of just start. If you happen to be a person who's like me and you have a few extra years of life experience under your belt, yay us. Sometimes we can fall subject to this idea of comparing ourselves to a previous version of ourselves. I want to just offer to you that that's not always helpful. Anytime I think about doing something new, one of the very first things I run up against is the idea that I might be embarrassed. What if somebody sees me? Oh my God. I actually get this in a bunch of really random situations, I will admit. I recently decided that it was time for me to get back into a gym. During lockdown, I invested in a lot of gym equipment. I can do pretty much everything at home by myself, but I decided that it was time for me to get back in the gym. And I delayed this action for a really ridiculously long time because I had some anxiety about people seeing me in the gym. It's really pretty silly. I've spent a lot of my adult life working out in groups and in very public settings. The idea that somebody would see me in the gym, you wouldn't think that it would bother me, but it did get in my way. And it's okay, you guys, for you to laugh at me about this. I'm sharing this story because I know people will see it. I share it because I want you to be able to hold on to it and remember it for yourself the next time you put yourself in a situation and this thought goes through your mind. In our lives, there are things that we have to do. There are situations where we must react. And there are also times when we have choices and we make decisions about things that we don't necessarily have to do. Whatever you're dreaming of doing in your own life right now, whatever you're dreaming of stepping into creating or trying, whether it's a hobby, a pastime, a new job, a new career, a new phase of life, a new relationship, you actually might not need to do it, right? That's where the choice is. And I think that choices can be really, really powerful. But if you have the choice, what I want to offer you is that if you ask yourself, all right, so if I want to do this, if embarrassment is the price of admission, if it's possible, if that might happen, am I okay with that? Then I think you find yourself in a position where you can make a decision whether you want to move forward or not. Again, I don't even know what you're trying to do. This is a video I'm creating to put on YouTube. You'll watch it. We don't know each other, strangers. That's the way it goes. For this project that I'm creating, this is a show. It exists only to be seen by other people. And so that really does mean if it's going to work, I have to be okay with other people seeing it in all of its imperfections. If I waited until I felt like it sounded as good as an existing professional network type show, I might never, ever start it. And if I never tell anybody about it, the chances are very few people will ever know. Many, many people that I know go through this in a wide variety of situations. We have this idea that comes from the way we are raised and our families and our education and our communities at large that if we're good enough at something, what will happen is that somebody will discover us and find us and pluck us out of the situation that we're in and put us into the new situation. That does happen sometimes, but I think it's pretty rare. I think what's actually much more common and much more effective is the person who takes the time and says, this is what I want to do, and then does the work to get themselves into the spot where they can be seen. In other words, if you want the job, you have to go to the interview. You have to send in your resume. If you want to be picked in the cast, you have to go to the audition. You have to submit your tape. If you want your book to be published, you have to be willing to send it to the publisher and let other people read it. If you want to go on vacation, you've got to buy the ticket. I get it. I don't love being embarrassed. It takes a lot to embarrass me these days because I've done so many things that are embarrassing. I've gotten to the point where I realize that I'm not actually in control of what other people do or think about me. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. We can dream, we can catastrophize. Both of those things happen. I actually don't know a way to completely stop that. If somebody else does, they can share that with us. Sometimes, though, I will do what I call playing back the tape. If my life was a movie and they play it back, how do I want this story to unfold? How do I want the story to be told in the future, right? If you ask me right now if I want to jump out of an airplane, the answer is no. In fact, I'm perfectly fine, I think, living my entire life not jumping out of an airplane. I think I'm fine if the story of my life is written that I did lots of things and some of them were good and some were bad, but she never ever went skydiving. I think at the moment I'm okay with that. Of course, that could change tomorrow, in which case I could make a different decision. When I thought about launching this show, though, it was different. I could be embarrassed. It could fail. Maybe nobody will listen. Maybe nobody will want to be a guest. All of those things could happen, but I was willing to do it and take the risk. Some people call this future thinking. There are a lot of different exercises that work for that. I'm calling it playing back the tape. If you've ever been in some sort of like leadership or motivational or coaching sort of setting and somebody's asked you to write your obituary, this is one of those exercises. The last thing I'm going to share with you in this video is that I give myself permission to be who I am, start with the skills that I have right now, the resources that I have right now, and I'm going to celebrate that as much as I can. As I record this, I'm 51 years old. I spent 25 years raising my family. Am I the stereotypical look of somebody who would launch a very forward-facing talk show format interview show? Maybe not. But in order for me to have the courage to start, I think I needed to be okay with being who I am and with what I have. There's a lot of quotes or platitudes that come about that. One of my favorites is doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. And so if that helps you, good. Here's a story that is from my youth. It's not actually my story, but I'm in the story. I was in college. I was out with my friends. We were at a party. One of my friends was clearly upset. So I approached her to figure out what was going on, have a conversation. And so what was happening was she was very upset because she had not been selected for the dance team. Do we call it dance team? What's a group of dancers? A dance troupe? All right. See, not getting all the details right, but you let me know what it's called. Did I mention we were drinking? She was very emotional, and mid sob, she blurts out that she didn't go to the tryout. All of these emotions are real and valid and true, but she didn't get picked, but she also didn't put herself in a position to be picked. She skipped the auditions. And I have no judgment about any of these things. I'm just presenting this as a scenario, right? She was very upset and she was angry with herself, right? Sometimes it's called failing in advance. People call it self sabotage. You let me know what words work for you. People do this all the time. I do it. I have done it. I'm going to do it again in the future, right? You convince yourself something is there's such a high degree of a chance of failure that it's not even worth putting yourself out there. And honestly, that's not always a bad idea. If you've ever watched those reality TV shows about the talent shows where they show the clips of the really, really awful auditions and it's cringy and embarrassing. I don't want to be one of those people. The other part of this that made me think about this is that to get the feedback, I think a lot of times you have to put your work out there in to the public. You've got to actually put yourself where somebody can see it. I ask for feedback all the time, and it takes a long time to actually get it in my experience. I have released 50 episodes of this show, more than 50 as this, and I just started getting feedback this week. I got a person sent me a message that was really, really great. It was like, you know what? This would be so much better if you did this. And they're right. I'm really, really thankful for that feedback because it's going to be better. But I didn't see it myself producing in the bubble that I'm in. I had to put it out there so that somebody could see it and say, this is okay, but it could be better if. And that's not the only way to get that feedback, but it is one of the ways to get that feedback. And now I have it and I can make improvements. I'd love to know what you think, what you want to do, the dreams of things you want to create and be and become. And I'd love to know what you think is in your way. In the meantime, whatever it is that you want to create, whatever you're dreaming of doing, whoever you're dreaming of being, whatever goals you're setting for yourself, whatever changes you want to make, I just encourage you to take a step forward and see what happens. Take a little step forward and see what happens. Until next time, I'm Amy Stone, the host and creator of The Art of Imperfect Adulting, signing off.